Emma Rodriguez had spent 3 years of high school eating lunch alone in the library, too terrified to speak up in class, let alone audition for the school play. But when her drama teacher, Ms. Rachel Thompson, saw Sydney Sweeney on The Tonight Show talking about overcoming small-town insecurities to make it in Hollywood, she knew she had to share how one actress's authenticity had given her most anxious student the courage to find her voice on stage and earn a full drama scholarship to Juilliard. As Rachel sat in the studio audience, her weathered hands clutched a program from their school's production of Our Town, where Emma had delivered a performance so raw and honest that it left the entire auditorium in tears. Tonight, under the bright lights of late-night television, Rachel carried a message that transcended entertainment. Sometimes the most powerful performances happen when someone finds the courage to be vulnerable. And heroes aren't just the ones on screen, but the ones who show others that dreams are possible even when fear feels bigger than hope. The Tonight Show studio buzzed with anticipation as Jimmy Fallon prepared to welcome one of Hollywood's most talked-about young actresses. Sydney Sweeney had become a household name through her powerful performances in hit series, but more than her acting ability, audiences connected with her authenticity, her willingness to be real about the struggles of growing up in a small town and chasing impossible dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the incredibly talented Sydney Sweeney, Jimmy announced, and the studio erupted as she walked onto the stage, waving with the genuine warmth that had endeared her to millions of fans who saw themselves in her journey. "It's so good to have you here," Jimmy said as they settled into their chairs. "You've had such an amazing year, and I know you've been really open about your background growing up in Washington. Can you talk about what that journey has been like?" Sydney's face lit up with the kind of smile that made her relatable despite her Hollywood success. "Thank you for having me, Jimmy. Yeah, growing up in a small town, Hollywood felt like this mythical place that existed for other people, you know? I remember watching award shows and thinking these actors were like different species or something." The audience chuckled, clearly connecting with her honesty. "But you kept pursuing it," Jimmy noted. "What kept you going when it felt impossible?" "Honestly, pure stubbornness," Sydney laughed. "And my family's support, even when it meant financial sacrifices. But I think the biggest thing was realizing that my insecurities, my small-town background, my social anxiety, those weren't things to hide from. They were part of my story, and they could actually make me a better actor." Her voice carried the conviction of someone who had fought for every opportunity she'd received. "You've talked before about dealing with social anxiety," Jimmy said, gently. "That's something a lot of young people struggle with. What would you tell someone who feels like their anxiety is holding them back from their dreams?" Sydney leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious. "I'd tell them that anxiety doesn't disqualify you from your dreams. Some of my best performances have come from channeling that nervous energy, that fear of judgment, into something creative. And I'd tell them to find their people, teachers, friends, family members who see your potential even when you can't." That's when a voice from the audience cut through the studio's comfortable energy with the clarity of someone who had witnessed transformation firsthand. "You became that person for one of my students, and it changed her entire life." The studio fell completely silent. Jimmy's head turned toward the audience, his entertainment instincts immediately sensing that something meaningful was about to unfold. Sydney looked up, clearly touched that her openness had resonated with someone on such a personal level. "I'm sorry," Jimmy said, standing up from behind his desk. "Did someone want to share something?" Ms. Rachel Thompson rose from her seat in the fifth row, her hands trembling slightly as she held a small theater program that represented months of patient work and one student's incredible breakthrough. At 52, she looked every inch the dedicated educator she was. Kind eyes that had seen countless students find their voices, graying hair pulled back in a practical bun, and the comfortable authority of someone who had spent decades nurturing young talent. She wore a simple blazer over a theater department t-shirt, and when she spoke, her voice carried the warmth of someone who had made it her life's mission to see potential in every student. "I'm Ms. Rachel Thompson," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I've been teaching drama at Jefferson High School in Ohio for 15 years, and I wanted to tell you about Emma Rodriguez." The studio audience was completely still, understanding they were about to witness something authentic and powerful. Jimmy walked to the edge of the stage, closer to Rachel. "Tell us about Emma." Emma came into my drama class 3 years ago as a sophomore, Rachel began, holding up the program so the cameras could see a photo of a young girl with bright eyes but a shy smile. Brilliant kid, incredibly perceptive about literature and character motivation, but she had such severe social anxiety that she couldn't order food at restaurants. Her parents had to speak for her at parent-teacher conferences. Sydney was listening with complete attention, her usual actress composure replaced by the focused compassion of someone who recognized her own struggles in Rachel's words. Emma would sit in the back corner of my classroom, never volunteering to read scenes, never participating in improvisations. I could see this incredible creativity bubbling under the surface, but she was terrified of being seen, of being judged. She paused, collecting herself. For 3 years, I tried everything I could think of to help her find her confidence. Small group work, private coaching sessions, writing exercises. Nothing seemed to break through that wall of fear. Jimmy nodded encouragingly. What changed? You, Rachel said, looking directly at Sydney. About 6 months ago, Emma came to class with this completely different energy. She asked if she could audition for our spring production of Our Town. I almost fell out of my chair. Sydney's hand went to her heart, clearly moved by the unexpected impact of her work. When I asked her what had changed, she told me she'd been watching your interviews, Sydney, especially the ones where you talked about growing up shy and anxious, about feeling like you didn't belong in Hollywood, about turning your insecurities into strengths. The audience began to stir with emotion, understanding they were witnessing the real power of representation and authentic storytelling. What role did Emma play? Jimmy asked, his voice softer now. Emily Webb, Rachel said, and theater people in the audience gasped, understanding the significance. The lead role, a character who dies young but comes back to observe the living, who delivers one of the most emotionally demanding monologues in American theater. She looked back at Sydney. Emma told me that watching you be honest about anxiety and still pursuing your dreams made her realize that her sensitivity wasn't a weakness. It was what would make her a great actress, that her ability to feel deeply was actually a superpower. Sydney stood up from her chair, visibly emotional. How did she do? She was magnificent, Rachel said, her voice cracking with pride. Opening night, Emma delivered Emily's final monologue about how people don't appreciate life while they're living it, with such raw honesty that there wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. The local theater critic said it was the most moving high school performance he'd seen in 20 years. The studio erupted in sustained applause, but Sydney was already walking toward Rachel, leaving her position as guest to become simply a person, moved by the power of connection and courage. Rachel, Sydney said, her voice thick with emotion. Where is Emma now? Full scholarship to Juilliard, Rachel announced, and the studio exploded in celebration. She's starting this fall in their drama program. But more than that, she's become a mentor to our younger students. She runs workshops for kids with social anxiety, teaching them that their sensitivity can be a strength. The applause continued, but Sydney wasn't finished. She took Rachel's hands in hers. You saved Emma, Sydney said. I might have provided some inspiration, but you were the one who was there every day, who believed in her, who created a safe space for her to discover her courage. Rachel shook her head. We all saved her, Sydney. You showed her that success. Though it was possible for someone like her, drama gave her a vehicle for expression. But your willingness to be vulnerable about anxiety, that's what made the difference. Jimmy approached them both, understanding that his role now was to facilitate something more important than entertainment. Sydney, how does it feel to know that your openness helped change a young person's life? Overwhelming, Sydney said immediately. This is exactly why I try to be honest about the hard parts of this journey, because maybe somewhere, some kid who feels invisible needs to hear that their anxiety doesn't disqualify them from their dreams. She turned back to Rachel. But I want to emphasize what you just said. Emma's transformation happened because she had you. Teachers like you are the real heroes. You saw her potential when she couldn't see it herself. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. That's what we do in drama education. We don't just teach acting techniques. We teach kids that their stories matter, that their voices deserve to be heard, that their emotions are valid and valuable. Jimmy addressed the audience and cameras, his voice carrying new gravity. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when authentic representation meets dedicated teaching. When someone uses their platform to be real about their struggles, and when someone else creates opportunities for young people to find their voices. He looked at Sydney. "You've always been vocal about supporting arts education. How important is it for successful people to stay connected to programs like Rachel's?" "Everything," Sydney replied without hesitation. "Arts education saved my life, and it's saving kids like Emma every day. These programs don't just create actors and artists. They create confident, empathetic humans who know how to express themselves and connect with others." Rachel nodded vigorously. "And when kids see someone like Sydney succeed while staying authentic about her struggles, it removes this barrier of thinking that success requires you to become someone different. Emma learned she could be herself, anxious, sensitive, deeply feeling, and that those qualities would make her stronger, not weaker." Jimmy sat on the edge of his desk, abandoning all pretense of formal hosting. "Rachel, what do you want people to understand about students like Emma, about kids dealing with social anxiety?" "That they're not broken," she said firmly. "They're not less capable or less talented. They just need different approaches, more patience, and examples of people who've succeeded while honoring their sensitive natures." She held up the program again. "Every kid in this cast has their own struggles, their own insecurities. Theater gives them a place to explore those feelings safely, to channel their pain into something beautiful," Sydney added. "And when they see people in the industry being real about mental health, about anxiety, about the challenges of this business, it helps them understand that success doesn't mean perfection. It means authenticity." The audience rose in sustained applause, recognizing that they had witnessed something far more valuable than entertainment. They had seen the real-time demonstration of how authentic storytelling, combined with dedicated education, could transform young lives. After the cameras stopped rolling, something beautiful happened. Sydney and Rachel continued their conversation, joined by Jimmy and several audience members who shared their own stories about teachers who had believed in them and artists who had inspired them to pursue their dreams despite their fears. The episode became one of the most shared Tonight Show clips ever, not because of celebrity appeal, but because it captured the transformative power of representation and the crucial role of arts education in building confidence and empathy. Sydney established the Authentic Voices Scholarship Fund, providing support for students with anxiety disorders. Emma called both Sydney and Rachel after the show aired. Jefferson High School's drama program received support after the show. Sydney began incorporating mental health advocacy into appearances. Rachel's teaching approach became a case study in drama education. Emmy graduated from Juilliard and launched her theater company. Because Rachel Thompson and Sydney Sweeney taught everyone that authentic artists sharing struggles and teachers creating safe spaces can transform insecurities.